So My Hero Academia Season 6 is well on its way, with nearly half the season already out for our viewing pleasure. And so far, in my humble opinion at least, it has been killing it. It's just been non-stop go, 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 and there hasn't been a single episode so far that hasn't had me hyped up on the edge of my seat, pining for more. God, it reminds me why I fell in love with the show in the first place. It's just so damn good. In this video, I'll be breaking down, letting you in on little details, and giving my opinion on 3 episodes of this season. That being Episode 4, Episode 5, and Episode 6, respectively. But before I begin, don't forget to Detroit smash that like button and slide on into that subscribe button's DMs to hit that notification bell. And now, without further ado, let's not waste any more time and dive right into My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 4, titled Inheritance. This episode covers 4 chapters of the My Hero manga, following the events of chapters 267, 268, 269, and 270. It opens up with a flashback of Tokoyami's training with Hawks, where not only does Tokoyami give us a brief rundown on how Hawks' quirk works, but we are also reminded that his biggest weakness is fire. But I'm sure that'll never be an issue, right? Oh shit. Following this flashback, the story cuts back to the present, where we see that Fat Gum's Fat Taxi, that's legit what he calls his technique, has picked up some new passengers: Kaminari, Jozu, and Kinoko. I honestly forget how massive Fat Gum is sometimes. Like, dude's 8'4" and has 4 teenagers in his stomach. But anyway, as Fat Gum runs the kids to safety, back at the villa, a burst of blue flames shoot out of a building, and Tokoyami, activating his bird sense, realizes his master may be in trouble. And of course, as we know, he is, as the episode cuts over to Hawks and Dabi, where a pissed off Dabi is going to town, firing away at Hawks. I mean, it was Thanksgiving like last week, so roasting a bird is very fitting. Dabi, laying the smack down on Hawks, casually burning the hero alive, informs Hawks that he would cry if he could, but his tear ducts have been burnt out. Foreshadowing. And also that Twice's quirk was the only power in the league that could really help him achieve his dream. And Hawks took that power away from him. While being burnt extra well done, Hawks, still confused about how Dabi knew his name, as a flashback reveals to us that the secret department of the Hero Commission that Hawks was raised/taught by took away his name from him at a young age, asks Dabi who he is. To which Dabi replies with the answer in this video here, where I fully explain who the character is. Can't be spoiling things in the breakdowns just yet. It's also interesting to note that in this flashback with a young Hawks and the Hero Commission, before Hawks accepts the Commission's special training program, while he is holding an Endeavor doll, he asks the workers if they will make him a hero like Endeavor, like the person who saved his life. Which is interesting, because in the manga, they don't make it as obvious Hawks is referring that Endeavor saved him, and instead leave it open that any hero could have saved him. But anyway, following the big reveal of Dabi's identity as the fiery villain, rants to Hawks that in truth they should have been focusing on him more than any villain or even villain army. He also makes it clear that he never cared about the League or Shigaraki, and that his only purpose is to make Stain's will a reality. There's also a moment in this speech where Dabi states the world can be forever altered because of one person's singular obsession, which is just slightly changed from the manga, which states one man's conviction. But I think obsession fits so much better when you realize the true meaning behind this statement. Don't worry, all will be revealed later in the season. Dabi then ends this speech by unleashing more flames on Hawks, as he tells the hero, your death will mean nothing in the end. But before we can see if Dabi kills him, the episode cuts back over to Team Endeavor at Jakku Hospital, where the man himself, Endeavor, and Aizawa make it to the secret Nomu facility, and together they help Crust knock back the Nomu Chubs who was blocking the entrance. Inside the facility, Mirko, still mid-combat with multiple high-end Nomus, realizes that the Nomus have fully awakened, and as a result have become far more dangerous. So despite how much this actually makes her want to fight more, she ultimately decides that if she's going to die, it'll be after she finishes her mission, and she makes a beeline for Dr. Kyodai and Shigaraki. The Nomus obviously try to prevent Mirko from escaping, landing some nasty attacks attacks, piercing her limbs and ripping off chunks of her body. But the rabid hero proves too fast and makes it to her destination. And as Endeavor and the others burst onto the scene and attack the Nomus, Mirko has just enough time to crack and damage Shigaraki's container before being pulled away and thrown back into Endeavor and the fight. Endeavor then tries to tend Mirko's wounds as she informs the other heroes over the radio that Shigaraki is in a vat just up ahead. And judging from how these Nomus were activated, all it will take is an electrical pulse for Shigaraki to awaken. So they need to act now. As Endeavor is preoccupied with the Nomu woman, who seems to be both the strongest and smartest of the bunch, and Aizawa needs to maintain his erasure on the other 3 Nomus to give the heroes present a fighting chance, Aizawa asks Exless and more importantly Present Mike to push forward and secure the victory. And Present Mike does, as he single-handedly makes his way to Shiggy, shatters his container with his quirk before he can be revived, and DJ punches Dr. Kyodai for making his friend cry, which is a reference to how Aizawa teared up when he tried to reach out to Shirakumo, aka Kurogiri. I also love Shiggy's corpse falling animation here, like he just flops on the ground, but I suppose he is dead, so that makes sense. Present Mike, after landing the fattest W in the My Hero world, then picks up Dr. Kyodai, who admits the villain's dream is finished, and rushes him back to the Nomus to get them to stop fighting, leaving the hero Exless to deal with Shiggy's corpse. Boy, I'm sure there's no way Exless can fuck this one up, right? As Present Mike is carrying the doctor, Kyodai goes on to reveal that not only was he the person who first theorized the quirk doomsday theory, the idea that quirks will eventually become too powerful to control and kill everyone, and that All For One was initially the only person who took this theory seriously, that he's over 100 years old, and that he duplicated his own quirk and gave the original quirk to All For One, choosing to wield the duplicate himself. But also, what I believe to be the most tragic is he reveals that when they orchestrated the villain attack that killed Shirakumo, their real target was actually Aizawa, as they wanted his quirk erasure. So yeah, the villain who killed Shirakumo was sent purposely to kill Aizawa. His friend died because of a villain that was sent after him. As if you couldn't make it more tragic. Oh, it's also revealed that All For One duplicated his quirk and has been secretly wielding the duplicate of the quirk the entire time, and the power they were transferring over to Shigaraki was actually the original quirk, All For One. Now, in case you're wondering why it matters who wields the original quirk and who wields the duplicate, it's because the essence of the original wielder lies within the original quirk, and the significance of this we will see later on, as the story cuts to the inside of Shigaraki's consciousness, where he is not only confronted by loving memories of his family and the less loving memory of his dad, but also the essence of All For One. See, told you it would come up. As Shiggy walks towards the essence of his mentor, accepting his power, the memory of his family tries to stop him from walking down this path, with each of them placing their hands on Shiggy in the same place he wore them in his original outfit. But having enough of being rejected by his family, Shiggy decays them all, and proceeds to walk into All For One, declaring, "Now you will see me for who I am." And with this, the episode ends, as back in the real world, a rogue electrical socket makes contact with the liquid Shigaraki is covered in, sending an electrical shock through his body, fully reviving the villain. And that's it for episode 4. This was a long-ass episode, not in terms of actual time, but in content. From Hawks and Dabi to Mirko and the Nomus awakening, Shigaraki getting killed, the Doctor's reveal, all the way to Shigaraki's resurrection. It was chock full of action and tension and My Hero lore, and it was amazing. I mean, it did cover 4 whole chapters of the My Hero manga, which is almost twice as much as the next episode. And speaking of the next episode, this brings us right into the breakdown of My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 5, titled The Trill of Destruction. This episode covers 2.5 chapters of the My Hero manga, following the events of chapters 271, 272, and the first half of 273. This episode picks up exactly where the last episode left off, with Team Endeavor still facing off against the high-end Nomus under Jakku Hospital. Initially, the heroes seem to be overwhelmed by the Nomus, but when backup arrives in the form of Gran Torino, the former number 9, now number 10 hero Ryukyu, Rocklock, and Backdraft, aka Hoseman, the heroes quickly get the upper hand and take down all of the Nomus. Hooray, the day is saved, the heroes won, and the show's over. or that would have been the case if not for the miraculous revival of Shigaraki. As deeper into the Nomu facility, Shigaraki, now fully awakened and sitting upright, immediately kills the hero Exless, RIP, and takes his cape for warmth, giving us, in my opinion, Shigaraki's best outfit. Before we can see what happens next, however, the story cuts back on over to Team Edgeshot, more specifically to Tokoyami, who, in realizing his master was in danger, escaped from Fat Gum's fat taxi and flew in just in the nick of time to save his mentor from being turned into a roast chicken. You know what they say, birds of a feather flock together. Upon realizing Tokoyami is a UA student, Dabi plays some mental warfare with the bird boy, informing him that his so-called mentor and number 2 hero killed twice a man who was just trying to save his friends in cold blood, and that the truth is, heroes are far more vile and worse than any villain. Of course, when Tokoyami denies this, Dabi sends out a flame attack at the 2 birds, forcing Tokoyami to dive out of the way with his mentor. But it is because of this attack that Hawks realizes Dabi's weakness. His body burns up when he uses his quirk, so he stalls for time by making speeches allowing his body to cool down. With this realization, the now wingless Hawks uses his last remaining bit of strength to tell his protege to run, which he does by jumping off the railing using Dark Shadow to swing to the lower floor. Unfortunately, this is only a temporary solution, as upon jumping to a lower floor, Dabi, using his quirk to fly the same way Endeavor uses his, floats down to the heroes, revealing he held back in his last 2 attacks, expecting them to run. And now that he has them trapped, he's finally going to finish them off. Fortunately, this turns out to be a temporary problem, as Getten, the ice commander of the Paranormal Liberation Front, creates a massive ice wall which not only launches Mount Lady through the air — he could have died a king, Fat Gum — but it also unintentionally knocks Dabi back, giving Tokoyami enough time to cover Dark Shadow and fly away with his mentor. And as they fly away, Tokoyami informs his now unconscious mentor that he doesn't care what Dabi said about him. He must have had good reason to do what he did. And I mean, yeah, he really did. Meanwhile, underneath the villa, Ridestro, who's requesting new legs from his subordinates, also notices that the monster that is Gigantomachia has awoken and is standing up. As Gigantomachia exclaims, he can smell that his master is now awake. And with this, the episode cuts over to the main cast of UA evacuating the civilians from the city beside Jakku, and all seems to be going perfectly well. That is until Midoriya, for the first time in a long time, hears the voice of the first user of One for All in his head, warning him that a transcendent one who has freed himself from the shackles of humanity is coming, and Midoriya must stop him. And as if on cue, Jakku Hospital and everything, and I mean everything, within the area begins to decay rapidly. Luckily for the main cast of heroes in Jakku Hospital, there are enough heroes that can fly fast enough to avoid this decay and carry anyone important enough to the plot. Although we did lose the number 6 hero, Crust, who in his final moments sacrificed himself to save Aizawa. RIP, hero. Back in the city, we see all of the main students desperately attempting to stop the decay's rampage, which has made its way to them, to no avail. Not even 45% of One for All or Todoroki's heaven-piercing ice wall can stop it. With this knowledge, the students then focus on getting as many civilians away from the decay as possible, as Dr. Kyudai, who is being carried by President Mike and Gran Torino, informs the heroes that despite their best efforts, something truly plus ultra, wow, really rubbing it in, has happened. Shigaraki has miraculously awakened and the heroes have lost. So close. As the rubble begins to fade and the decay stops, standing in what remains of Jakku Hospital is Shigaraki, who walks over to a nearby semi-intact machine containing what was numerous duplicated quirk-erasing bullets. Unfortunately for Shiggy, most of these bullets are destroyed, and it's not thanks to him, but thanks to Exless, who on a whim blew up this machine with his quirk mere moments before his death. I guess you weren't all bad, X. While examining hearing the broken bullets, All For One's voice begins to echo in Shigaraki's head. But the villain shakes this voice away, claiming it to be nothing more than a side effect of his newly acquired quirk. And with this, episode 5 comes to an end, as Shigaraki picks up a communication device and orders Gigantomachia to come to him with the rest of the League. It's finally time for them to destroy everything. And that's it for episode 5. All in all, content-wise, a shorter episode than the last, but still chock full of crazy events. I also love the addition of the flickering green stoplight beside Midoriya turning red right as Shigaraki activates his quirk. It's such a tiny thing, but god does it add to the scene. But enough time wasting. Now it's time to get to the final episode of this breakdown. My Hero Academia Season 6, Episode 6, titled Encounter Part 2. This episode covers roughly 3 chapters of the My Hero manga, following the events of the second half of Chapter 273, 274, 275, and the first half of 276. This episode opens up back over with Team Edgeshot, where we see the continuation of the hero's assault on the Gunga Mountain Villa. At least Team Edgeshot didn't mess this up. Yet. In the midst of this attack, we see pro heroes Mount Lady and Cementos team up to take on the ice villain Getten, who I totally thought was a girl the first time I saw him, as well as Himiko Toga, who is going on an absolute rampage, murdering heroes left and right in a fit of fury over Twice's death. Queen Bloodkink is pissed, but not as pissed as the heroes are when Gigantomachia bursts through the ground, not only signaling the resurrection of Shigaraki and the failure of their comrades, but also the failure of their own attack, as the villains once again have a means to escape from underground. Y'all had one job. And speaking of Shigaraki, back over at the remains of the Jakku Hospital, the main villain of our story seems to be haunted by the ghost of his master, with his voice echoing like a ghost in Shiggy's head. One for all, one for all. No, you're all for one. All for one. That's okay, I get your names mixed up the whole time too. Shortly after this haunting, Endeavor rockets onto the scene and immediately attacks Shiggy with a powerful attack, initiating the fight between the #1 hero and the new King of Villainy. Endeavor opens up this fight strong, covering the entire battlefield in flames and outmaneuvering the villain, eventually pinning him down. Unfortunately, this proves futile against Shiggy's new power, as his body now regenerates faster than he burns, and he manages to wipe away Endeavor and his flames using an air cannon quirk. Upon knocking back Endeavor, Shiggy retrieves the hand of Nana Shimura, the only remaining hand decoration he has left, and the few remaining quirk erasure bullets from a nearby storage unit. And he thinks about how, despite only receiving all of All For One's stockpiled quirks, he feels like he has had them for his whole life, which makes him question, why does he feel so unsatisfied? And perfectly answering this question is the voice of All For One, who once again echoes in his head, one for all, making Shiggy realize the only thing that will satisfy him is stealing the quirk his mentor never could. In fact, Shiggy's new desire for one for all is so insatiable, he says the words out loud while fighting Endeavor, who confusedly relays the words back to his team, making Deku realize shit is about to hit the fan. Shigaraki, then using the quirk search, the quirk All For One stole from Wild Wild Pussycats member Ragdoll way back when, locates Midoriya and using his newfound super strength, absolutely yeets himself towards his arch nemesis. Not gonna lie, I love Shiggy's jump here. It just looks so badass. Deku, realizing Shiggy is on his way to him, decides that maybe it's not the best idea for him to be surrounded by countless civilians. So he runs off into the now debris-filled city alongside Bakugo, the only other person present aware of the truth behind One For All. And with this change in location, Midoriya informs Endeavor, without giving away too much, that he is Shigaraki's true target. So Endeavor works with Midoriya to keep track of Shigaraki's location to lure him as far away as possible from all of the civilians. While they're doing this, it occurs to Midoriya that there's absolutely no reason for Bakugo to be following him, the target, in this plan. But Bakugo informs that damned nerd that 1, he was the only person nearby who knows Midoriya is the target, and thusly the only person who can provide him with backup, up. 2, he wants revenge on Shigaraki for kidnapping him and making him the reason All Might lost his power. And 3, he wants to prove to himself and Midoriya he's not gonna fall behind just because Midoriya has mastered 30% of his power. However, Shigaraki, sick of the hero's game of cat and mouse, decides he has enough, and using a combination of his air cannon quirk and radio waves quirk, he not only destroys all of the hero's communication devices and knocks back Endeavor again, but he catapults himself right in front of Midoriya and Bakugo. The two fledgling heroes, now face to face with Shiggy, notice that they feel the same intense presence they felt that night back in Camino Ward, the dark presence of All for One. Shigaraki then places his hand out and prepares to catch Midoriya mid-flight to scratch that almost insatiable itch and steal One for All. But mere moments before this can happen, Gran Torino jets onto the scene and steals away the two boys in one swift movement, leaving all of the other heroes who escaped Jakku Hospital to face off against Shiggy. Now, this normally would be no fight at all, as all Shiggy has to do is use his decay and poof, fight over. But unluckily for him, Aizawa is on the scene, who even Shigaraki recognizes is as cool as ever. The heroes then get into an intense battle with Shigaraki, who even with his quirk suppressed, still maintains his overwhelming strength, with him being on par with natural power as previous high-end Nomus. Gran Torino, having brought Midoriya and Bakugo to a temporary safe spot, informs the duo that Shiggy does in fact possess All for One. So it is imperative the duo stay away from him from now on. And while the duo initially protest just hiding away, Gran Torino tries to ease the boys' tension by informing them that Shigaraki is just one person. The heroes can surely handle him. And as if on cue, just as Gran Torino says this, out from the ground appears countless Nomu. As it turns out, when Shigaraki shot his radio wave blast, he also activated all of the dormant Nomu still left in their resting vats, leaving the heroes with a new army of Nomus to fight. And that's it, folks, for episode 4, 5, and 6 of season 6. Overall, this was an amazing set of episodes. I mean, I can't say it enough. Studio Bones have been killing it this season. I forgot how much I missed this. Now, I have seen some things around the Elon Twitterverse complaining about how they ruined some scenes from the manga, but I haven't seen anything like that at all. I've literally had the two side by side, and it's been pretty damn one-to-one. I will say, however, episode 6 kind of ended abruptly, like it was mid-song and then it just sharply cuts away. And I mean, now what kind of self-respecting individuals could ever do something so stupid as end their episode mid-sentence?